Welcome in, everybody. We're going to take a minute or two just to let people trickle in before I officially start the webinar. So um, just wait just a little bit here for people here. All right. So welcome to our Orchestrated Kickstart webinar series. If you're just joining us for today, last week we did a production part 1, which was geared towards the planning of production. This week, we're going to be doing production part 2, which is going to be more of the expressing of your production orders. So my name is Mike Ivacek. I'm going to be presenting for you today. Before I get started, let's just do a little bit of housekeeping. At the bottom of your screen, you'll see 3 buttons: chat, Q&A, and raise hand. If you guys can hear me and see those buttons and also see my the presentation, go ahead and give a raise hand for me. All right, and I'm getting a decent amount, so I'm going to go ahead and lower those hands. And as a reminder, if this Kickstart webinar series is beneficial to you and you're wanting a little more, maybe outside of just the webinar, maybe some training, feel free to put in requests and such on our support site or reach out to your CSM. All right, let's take a look at our agenda today. So our agenda is going to be reviewing production part 1. So what we covered last week, we're going to lightly just go over that. We're going to take a look into the worksheets, which is where the production is going to be actually expressed. Then we're going to be going into expressing that production, and then taking a look at a couple of the wizards that I mentioned last week that didn't really play a part in the production part 1. And then I'll jump into a demo. And then lastly, once the demo is completed, I'll share some maybe hot tips or something that I think is relevant, or we can open it up to a line of like a general forum for questions that you guys might have at the end with the database open so I can go over examples. And then just a big disclaimer here, with the examples I'll be showing through, they're going to be specific to the beer. So I'll be using beer-related terms and such, but the concepts I'll try and broaden it as much as I can for spirits production or whatever you might be producing. All right. So just kind of reviewing what our production order looks like. The up top information is about our product or what we're going to be making. This is also the planning information, the status of the PDO, production order PDO, as I'll say sometimes, and what's meant to be produced and what the product's going to be. In the main table, we have our information about our components. And this is a copy of our bill of materials, which showing each of those raw materials. Then last week, we covered the PDO creation wizard. It allows you to create multiple production orders at a time, and build production runs allows you to create those production orders for an entire run by entering information about your starting item. So you add your starting item, your production date, and your number of turns, and then click outline new production run, and you enter in your batch info, and then you're ready to add that to the wizard. And you can, and if you want to make changes after the fact, you also have the scheduler. So it allows you to have that quick at-a-glance production schedule. It gives you that drag and drop rescheduling if you need to move production dates around. It's a direct link to the production orders in the database, so you can double click and it'll open up the production order in the SAP database. And it also allows you to see sales and purchase orders, so you can see when you're going to get raw materials in, or see when those orders for your finished product come in. And there's tons of different filters I see people use throughout. If they want to see a monthly view, maybe they want to see the tank snapshot of what's going to be available for fermenters. It's a great tool. So now we're going to jump into the rest of production after the planning part. So we have our production worksheets. So once we have our production orders scheduled, we will express them from our worksheets. If you're making beer, you'll express wort PDOs from the brew sheet. If you're making spirits, you'll start on the cook sheet if you're doing grain to glass. Everything else before packaging happens on the cellar worksheet if you're using beer, and the stillhouse sheet if you're producing spirits. And then the packaging worksheet is handles all of the packaging production orders. So this is a screenshot of the brew sheet, but the cook worksheet looks and functions identically. So let's just take a quick look and see what we're looking at here. Across the top, we have a number of selection criteria that will determine the production orders that appear on the sheet. So location, so where these are going to be produced, the PDO status. So this is, I mentioned last week with the planning portion of this, but a lot of people use the planned versus released to help with this view. So you're only seeing, let's say, the week's production orders that are going to be planned out, rather than seeing like if you have planned and released, you'd be seeing a lot more options. So it's a way to filter down and keep things kind of clean in these worksheets. And then the date range filters, and then the refresh matrix is to apply any changes that you make to the top area. Production orders populate in the central table here. You can see the information about the production order, the item scheduled to be produced, the brand, the batch number, production date, etc., all in this main table. Highlighting a production order will populate information in the production order lines and production procedure tables if procedures are attached on that bill of materials. Like I mentioned last week when I was kind of going over the functionality and the buttons on the bill of materials, this is really only where that procedure is shown on this right side here, and I don't see a lot of people using that. And then, like I said, in that bottom part of this screenshot, you can see the production order lines, what's being consumed. And if you're tracking yeast crop information will populate in the lower right. And then we'll kind of go over this on the demo and more stuff too, but that if you have a production order highlighted on that left side under on the buttons to press on the left, there's that express button. That's where you're going to be expressing the production orders. And then this is a snapshot of the cellar worksheet. And then real quick, just a quick note on the brew worksheet too. You'll notice that there's a table for wort and green beer, like a tab. We typically, even though you could express your green beer production orders on this, we usually suggest that you do it on the cellar worksheet because of the functionality I'm going to show you that's a little bit different. So this would be the cellar / stillhouse if you're doing spirits too. They're going to look identical. This is where we express everything between like green beer, dry hopping, if in stillhouse, this is where you'd see distillation, production orders. This is where you would see like blending, can proofing, bottle proofing, that kind of stuff as well. And for beer, of course, you'd be seeing we do have the tab for green beer that's exclusive to green beer on this cellar tab, and then on the cellar tab is where you'd see like dry hop, bright beer, what other kind of like whatever thing that's going through with the beer. So up on the top, it's the same criteria and filtering that we saw in the brew / cook sheet. Below that, and this is why these sheets are a little bit different and why we usually have green beer being done here. It gives you visibility into your current tank status. So now you can see what's happening in each tank, the volume and type of liquid. and like, for example, days left, depending on the day set and item master data, you can see how long things have been sitting in tanks. In the middle, you'll see the production orders you need to make. And below that, you'll see the line of the list of ingredients that go in each production order again. And you always have the ability to drill into those production orders to make changes if needed as well. And then on the left, we see our Express button again, and I'll be going over more of those buttons probably in the demo. All right, and then lastly, our last worksheet that we'll be looking at is the packaging worksheet, is where we will package your finished product. It's very similar to the seller worksheet with the selection criteria, current tank status, production orders, production order lines, and the Express button is on the left when you're ready to express your product. So I mentioned expressing. So for each separate worksheet, the Express screen looks the same every time. Similar to a bill of material and PDO, what you're making is on top, and what you're consuming is going to be in the table below. So entering those quantities on the Express screen will directly impact inventory. We're recording how much we produced to bring that liquid into inventory, how much ingredients we consumed to issue out those parts of inventory. All right, and then we have the wizards. So we talked last week briefly about these wizards, but they come into play more during the expression or creation of your planned production orders. The release wizard is for mass releasing your planned production orders, and that's the tool that I was saying before. If you set everything to planned and you only want to release a certain amount to be visible on those worksheets, the release wizard's really useful for that because you could do multiple at once. And just like in the example I keep using, release the week's planned production orders. So you're only seeing the weeks. And then we have the close wizard. The close wizard is used to mass close production orders once they've been expressed. It's very, very important, and I'll try and go over an example in our demo. It's super important to close your production orders as soon as you can after you've expressed them. Otherwise, you can get some I've seen some very terrible variances happen, and people's cost of goods sold have been vastly wrong because of something as simple as closing a production order. So I'll try and go over that in our demo today and show why that's important. And again, with that disclaimer, that in one of our upgrades coming out soon, there will be the availability once you click Express on a production order. It'll tell you, and this is something you'll set up, is like variance thresholds. So if a variance threshold is passed, it's going to give you an error message saying like, "Hey, are you sure you want to do this?" And then the other thing too is when you hit Express, it'll say, "Do you want to close this production order? Yes, no," and it'll close it for you right away as well. So because of all these issues that we've seen come in, that's a kind of improvement that we saw that is going to be very beneficial for you guys. Again, with the close wizard though, this can be kind of a powerful wizard, and you need to make sure that you're closing the documents that you actually intend to close rather than like on the view here on the close production orders. Like you could easily close a bunch of open plan production orders that were meant to be expressed but now have to be re-entered because they were closed. So it's a powerful tool. Just make sure you're not clicking willy-nilly in there. All right, I'm going to jump into our demo and we're going to go over some production runs and go over some kind of tips and tricks. So if you bear with me, I'm going to stop this share screen and share in my database. And if you guys have questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A, and we're going to try and answer them if possible, like on the fly or at the end as well. So. All right, so I am going to, we're going to start with production here. And I'm going to go into, let's start a new production run just to kind of review last week's. We're going to do a Pilsner. Forward. I'll do 2 turns to show you the variances. And we're going to start today. And for today's, there are like lead times and stuff. I'm going to have to set everything for today for this example. So outline production run. This will prompt us for a batch information. Review this, and I notice already that I have some rows. Looks like I did some testing with things on this particular thing. So we have our wort 2 turns, green beer, and then some planned loss for our bright beer as well. And then I'm just going to set all of these to today, and we're going to make magic beer that gets produced in 1 day. I'm going to leave the warehouses for now. And then just review this. Like I said before, we can release them from here as well. And then our last review, showing our batch information, showing our MPNs to link everything together. And all that looks good. So I'm going to click create. And they're disappearing because they're getting created into the system. All right, so our first trip here is going to start with our brewing worksheet, like I mentioned in the presentation. And for spirits, we have our cooking worksheet as well. You can see that they're right next to each other. And then the stillhouse worksheet, cellar worksheet, and then our packaging worksheet. And you'll notice too, when we build production runs that it doesn't include a finished product. There are, you can actually set that if you want it to be included or not. The reason why we default to no is because you don't always know what you're going to be producing into, what SKUs, like half barrel kegs or cases of bottles or something like that. So that's why it's excluded. And I can show us how to add in those packaging, different ways to do that. If you do know ahead of before that beer is hitting the bright tank, there is a way to plan that out through a let's see here. Where is it? Through what's called the packaging run. So if you know it ahead of time before it's going to hit and you want to get those production orders planned out and created, what we can do is go into this packaging run here, and we want our source item to be, what was it? Oops. It was Pilsner. Here we go. So we choose that. Give it 1 moment. And what that did is it looked at this source item. That's what we're going to be consuming from. And it's going to grab all the items that have bill materials that consume that. So you can see all of our SKUs for a Pilsner here. And if you, again, this is the method of creating these ahead of time before things are physically in that bright tank already. If it was in the bright tank, you could click add warehouse, If we're doing this ahead of time, like we're doing in this example, I can click Add PDO. Here's my planned one for today. I could select that. So there's our batch information, how much is going to be available, nothing in stock currently, but this is where I could plan out my my packaged finished goods ahead of time. So let's say I wanted to make you can see here I have an assigned amount here and I still have 23 left. So let's just put me on the spot here. That'll be good. I know 10 barrels is quite a little bit of loss. And then we do have a question in the Q&A asking about if you have an inactive finished goods you no longer make, is the only way to get them to not show up on the sheet by editing the bill of materials to remove the bright beer from that bill of material, or is there another way to do it without editing the BOM? Good question. We can try. I don't know if making the item inactive on item master data removes that from here or not. But we can definitely try. Let's try that. Let's drill into this item first. I'm going to try making this inactive, and let's see. Cancel this. And then just bear with me with this one moment, please. Good question, though. And again, it's not one that I think about, so we're just going to live test it. Looks like it still shows up. So now we'll try it, what I mentioned earlier, or like what was mentioned as a possible solution. We go into the bill of materials here. And then what I'm going to do is just remove this bill of materials. Or is there another? Let's see any other way to do this. But you don't want to edit the bill of materials in this question in case you want to make it again later. All right, minimize this again. Yeah, it looks like what the packaging run is looking at. It's looking at bill of materials that do contain this item here as a component. So as we can see here, we're not seeing that firkin anymore. So to answer your question, that's a way to kind of clean this up. Let's see what my quantity was again. Yo. And like I said, there's really two ways to do this. I'm showing you the way of, I think that I find this to be more common where you're not waiting for the beer to be in the bright tank before getting these production order, these plans out for your like available to promise per se. You want to get these out there ahead of time to kind of make sure your available to promise is looking good. So What I'll do is I just reviewed this. I'll keep these as planned. It also grabs that MPN doing this from this production order as well, which is nice. And that batch information right here. That created the production orders, and yep, likes to pop up again, see if you want to make some more packaging runs. All right, so we're going to start with the wort. We're going to brew some wort. So we're going to start in the brew sheet. You can see that we have our tabs for wort and green beer, and I said usually we do our green beer on the other one because in the cellar worksheet, because you get that extra tank status to see what fermenter things are going to go into. We can see that I have our location, planned released. So if I just wanted to see released, I have to click refresh matrix, and then our dates. There's a setting that I'll show you guys later that lets you default what you want your start date and end date to be. All right, so we're still seeing here because this is my demo database, and there's a lot of stuff in here. One quick note that I want to show you guys is there's a quick way to see too, like what production orders here that I know have been expressed already. And that has to do with these columns here. So issued and receipt. And you also notice these two buttons here. So we didn't always have the express button. Came out later, and it's kind of like a little mini wizard of its own. What it does is it does both of these things. So back in the day, we'd have to issue out our components and receipt in our product. And what the express does is both of that all in one swoop for us. And then we also have some other buttons that I'll cover here. So we have our close. So once I express these, I'm going to close them. I'm going to close one, and then I'm going to show you the difference in what happens if you close things right away or if you wait. There's a timing adjust. I don't see it to be being used. And then we do have some QC functionality. It's not built out super well, in my opinion, and I do see a lot of people managing their QC outside of our software. And then I can jump to the scheduler from here too if I wanted to. So for this production order, I'm going to do my first turn of my Pilsner. You can see my batch information all right here, my master production number. I know what these are. So I'm going to hit express. And this is where a lot of you guys, if you're into the production, you're sitting here for a second. That one moment seemingly takes forever. Because I'm in my demo database, the one moment is literally drawn from, it's looking at what you have in inventory for those components that we're going to issue out. And this usually takes a while when I do demos because I have a lot of batches sitting in there because I've demoed like purchasing and stuff. So if you ever wondered like, why does this take so long? That's why. It's grabbing all that batch information. And we'll see that it won't take as long on for something like green beer in a second. Yep, that's a lot of batches of 2-row bulk. All right, so when we're looking at the express screen, we need to show our received quantity. So planned quantity, we have 30. This is where you're telling the system, what did we actually do? If you're spirits, you're also going to see this over here for target proof, and then you're recording what the actual proof is of your product, which will automatically calculate your proof gallons based on volume times proof equals proof gallons. It's also show you any variance as well. There's a spot for your initials. There is a setting where you can require that. So people kind of have to put their little fingerprint on these things. And one thing that I will mention is if you do see something that doesn't look right in here, you don't want to just like, I think I used this in last week's example. One of the big things I see is people will make a production or they'll make a one production order to like maybe correct for something. But they don't change that planned quantity. So that planned quantity it defaults to 1, and they'll just put 30. And that's going to tell the system, like, you planned for 1 barrel and got 30 barrels. That's going to be a huge variance. if you ever run into that, stop right there. And what you're going to want to do is drill into this production order. This will bring up your actual production order information and make the changes as you need. Like, so you're not getting those crazy variances. Or if you need to make any adjustments here, or change like a warehouse, if it's set to default, you can change that here. You can also express from this production. We don't have to be in the worksheet to express. If I had this open and I made some adjustments and I wanted to express it, I could do that here. And then also our database defaults to first in, first out. So you can see here it's looking at that oldest batch to cover this. You want to make sure that if you do have multiple batches and you're doing accurate batch tracking, make sure that if you're not doing FIFO, to make sure you put whatever batches you actually consume in there and review this. The system will give you like a red number here if things aren't enough in stock. And usually that's a pause button on your express production where you got to go text Joe in purchasing this to see why it's showing that we don't have enough sterling hops in stock, for example. But after review, so we're going to do a little bit of variance here, and I'm going to show you why it's important to close right away. I'm going to put 28. Calculate your variance there. When I reviewed everything, I'm going to hit, oh yeah, another thing too, is if I did go into that production order and make edits and updated that, I could keep staying on the screen. I don't have to X out and go back in. If I click refresh, it's going to refresh all this data to whatever you changed here. So when I'm ready, I'm going to hit process. All right, so now on my brew sheet, I can tell that I've expressed this because I have that issued and receipt. So for this one, I'm going to close it right away. And then for the next one, I'm not going to close it right away. And we're going to see the differences here. So you can either highlight this and click close, or you could, if it had the production order open, you could close it as well. This will just prompt you to change that status to closed. This is where you kind of review to plan completed on our summary tab. We can see that we have some variance here. And all we have to do if everything looks right is hit update. This is just telling us that we did have a variance. All right, so now we can see that this is closed. Just really covering real quick, you can see the plan versus issued quantity of your components on the components tab. We got that summary tab that I told you about. And then on the history tab, we have that what the Express kind of wizard did in the background is it created an issue for production and a receipt from production. And we can see that we had some variances there as well because we didn't get as much out of it as we planned. All right, I'm going to minimize this and keep it open, and we're going to use it as an example of to close your production orders. So I'll just express this one also at 28. Again, it's just taking a while because of all those batches of two-row bulk I have in the system. process. And don't be like me on this demo, actually review what you're putting in. And I was disconnected. 1 second. Felt like that happened last week, right around this time as well. I'm still unable to connect. Sorry for the technical difficulties, people. It's giving me an unable to connect message. Bear with me for 1 second while I try and troubleshoot this. And then, Alex, are you also on the webinar today? You are, I can't hear you. Are you able to connect to SU1? All right, I was able to get back in, thank goodness. Also, Alex, I don't know if your microphone was working or something because I couldn't hear you. But we're back. All right, thanks for bearing with me, guys. So it looks like there's our, and it's only showing the one that we didn't close yet because I have it set to released. So I'm not going to close this one right away, and I'm going to show us kind of what happens behind the scenes when you don't do something right away versus if you do. So I'll show you in this example first. And this is kind of going more into the financial side of things. But when I express production orders, there's 3 journal entries that will happen in the system. There's my issue for production. And again, this is kind of going into the more financy stuff, but I feel like it's valuable for people to see this. So when you issue out, you get a journal entry that's crediting, it's getting rid of that inventory, your raw materials. And what our system does is it puts it in this WIP account that you'll see. And a lot of people ask, like, why do we have this WIP account? This is why. It's kind of like a little limbo account that's going to happen. So I'll just move this one over here. And then we have our receipt from production. And what that does is it then takes that amount in our WIP account and puts it into our semi-finished goods ward. And you'll notice that there's a different total here, right? Because we had variance. We issued out more than what we received because we had some loss. So when you close the production order, there's a final journal entry that happens that makes sure that your cost of goods sold is going to get rolled up into this. And when I look at the summary, I can look at the journal remark for this production order. And this is what you want to see. This is the system doing its job for us. So it's crediting that variance account, putting it in this WIP variance account, taking it right back out because we did it right away while things are still in stock. And then it puts that variance and makes sure that our semi-finished good is true value. It's a little more valuable because we got lost, but we still consume the same amount of raw materials. So I'll keep this minimized for now. And what we're going to do, and sorry if that's going above anybody. I like to show people this and why it's important. All right, so for now, I'm going to leave this unclosed so we can take a look at it in a second. But we're done in the brew house. I forgot to close that. Now I'm going to go into the cellar. All right, and then I'm going to go into my green beer tab, make sure my all the things are set right, and I should be able to see this, which I do right here. And I'm going to say that, well, actually, we planned for 60. I'm going to make some adjustments before I express this. Instead of 60, because we only got, what was it, 54, 28, 56. Just going to say that to kind of eliminate that variance that we're going to have. Maybe I took a look at the snapshot and I know what fermenter I want to put it in instead of that default one that isn't a real one. I'm going to put this in fermenter 5. Take a look at any other data I need to change it, automatically change that plant quantity. I'm going to update this. And then again, just real quick, seller worksheet. It looks pretty much the same, except it has look into your warehouse, your tanks as well, which if I was looking correctly, I wouldn't have put it in 5. I would have put it in 6 because I got a beer in there. That's 1,794 days old beer. And then some other things on the seller worksheet that are different. You can do, there's a couple new buttons. You can create a new production order on the fly here. You can create a goods issue or goods receipt or a warehouse transfer as well, just from here. Maybe there's some trickle of liquid remaining in a tank. You could goods issue that out or goods receipt something in or change a warehouse. Again, QC data as well, and you can jump to a scheduler. So I will express this. For this one, I'm going to say we just got 56. And then again, if you're not looking, doing your due diligence looking, I can see that I have an old batch in here as well, and I don't want that. So I'm doing this batch. I'm going to hit express for process. And again, you can see that this went a lot faster because there's just not as much information for that express screen to pull in. Okay, so if I've expressed this, so we're going to take a pause there and jump back to the brew worksheet where I forgot to close that right away. And now this has already been consumed. It's gone. I'm going to show us what happens if you forget and it's out of inventory when you close it. So I'm going to try and close this one. All right, so the issue and receipt for this is going to be identical to the one that we looked at that we closed right away. Where things deviate from when I close the other one right away is if I look at this journal remark now that things are out of stock. I shouldn't have seen this. Why is... Oh, it's because I have that old batch still in stock. Normally, I wouldn't have a bunch of this sitting in stock in the brew house. Because I still had some in stock, it's doing this correctly. So this is a bad example on my part. But if I didn't have anything in stock, lines 3 and 4 would be non-existent. And where that variance would be sitting is in our WIP variance account, which not ideal if you're trying to have accurate cost of goods sold based on your variances and stuff like that. It never rolls up into those COGS. So that's why it's really important. You'll have to use your imagination here and just get rid of the lines 3 and 4 because my demo database has a bunch of old beer in stock and it rolled up into that. But that's why it's important to close right away before things leave stock. All right. So I'm going to try and do good due diligence, and I'm going to close this right away. And again, really excited about the update that's going to roll out. That's going to make a lot of people's, you don't even have to think about it. It's just going to be a button when you express this. Again, I'm going to review, update, and close that right away. This didn't have any variance. So if your production order doesn't have any variance, no big deal. You don't have to like still close it as soon as you can, but it's really when you have those variances that it's really important. And since I expressed this too, I can also see it sitting in here as well with my other beer in the same fermenter. And again, based on your lead days, looks like I have a lead day of set to 10 on item master data. That's what it's going to have there. So I'm going to go to the cellar, and we're going to express this bright beer. And I'm getting that red, which I know is why it's happening. And what I'm going to do, again, show you on the fly how to change these things. I'm going to jump that production order. I don't want it to go into B99. I want it to go into Bright Tank 6. And I want this to come from, if I remember correctly, was it an F05? Yep. All right. And we have that planned variance here as well, which, all right. So I made the changes. I'm going to click refresh. And you can see that the changes, if you hit refresh, are all here. And it looks like I didn't change the in stock on the planned quantity, but that's okay. I'm just going to put 56 because that's what we actually consumed. And I'm going to say, yeah, 53. And hit process. All right, and then I'm going to close it right away to be a good example. All right, and then this is where we'd be done with the seller worksheet. So I'm going to get out of here. Get rid of that now. And I'll just, not again. 1 second, guys. Hopefully this isn't happening to you guys while you guys are logged into your own database. It looks like it's not just me that this is happening to. Just bear with me, and I'm gonna try to get through the last examples on this webinar. Looks like we're getting a few people also having this similar issues as me. So apologize if you're also experiencing stuff like this. I'm gonna try one more time. And if not, it sounds like my assistant Alex is able to get in, so I might rely on him to finish this off. Yeah, it's still not letting me log in. So Alex, if you're able to get into my demo database and share your screen, I can kind of just you can be my puppet, and I can kind of get through the last things I want to talk about.
Absolutely. Give me just a moment.
And again, thanks for being patient, guys. Trying to get it through the finish line here. And as always, I appreciate you guys joining this webinar series. I'm really excited to see the attendance and turnout. Oh, Alex, I'm back in, so we're going to hope for no more whammies here. All right. So mentioned earlier, we created those packaging, the finished good production orders ahead of time. The other way to do that easily is if, again, if you're waiting for it to be in a bright tank right away to make these. Another way to do that is to, if I find my production order or my bright beer sitting in the bright tank, what you can do from the packaging worksheet, which again looks very similar to all the other ones, you have the create new, just like the seller worksheet does. Similar buttons here for like QC and stuff like that. But if I waited till the thing was in the tank before I want to package it off, what you can do is right click and click create packaging run. And that's when you do that, it pulls in that data from the it's essentially from the warehouse and shows you, just brings up all the stuff that we looked at ahead of time. So really, like I said, I think I've seen more customers do it ahead of time because they want to have that available to promise, accurate, and like make sure things are coming into stock at right times. But this is the other way to do it if you're waiting for it in the bright tank. But we already made production orders, so I'm not going to do this. But this is where we're going to end our production by expressing our last two production orders. And then my suggestion with finished goods, and specifically because you're going to get lost from this, people ask me, what's the best way to accurately get my COGS of recording that loss of the packaging? There's really, if you know exactly how much you lost, like in this example, I kegged a bunch and I'm doing a lot of cases. If you know exactly your loss from, like, let's say bottling and kegging, and you have that information, feel free to record that on the production order. A lot of people don't have that information. So my suggestion is option 2, which is when you're recording this in the database, choose the one that has the most volume attached to it, which I think is the kegs. 42 versus. Wow, did I really split that up? Wow. Oh wait, sorry, I'm looking at the wrong. You'd want to pick the production order with the most amount of liquid being consumed, most amount of like bright beer in this case, and save that one for last. And roll the cogs into what's going to get you the most quantity of your finished goods. And then the last option, if you don't record that at all, is to do a goods issue at the end with the variance reason miscellaneous loss, bottling, or kegging. So it reports accurately on your TTB report. So I'm going to express this. We only have 3 minutes left. Oh, gosh. Why am I getting reds in here? Oh, I don't have enough in stock of my packaging. So for this example, well, I would have to put the pause and be like, hey, why don't I have this in stock? And I have to go and adjust things. For this example, I'm not actually gonna, because I wanted to show a few other things before. This is kind of just rinse, wash, and repeat of just expressing, and then I was gonna put, that's the reason why I say wait to the end to do your biggest one, is it makes your math easy, because then you just put the actual quantity of what's left in the tank. So you don't have like little 1 barrel things sitting here, which I see sometimes if people aren't expressing their production accurately. In which case I would just need to goods issue this out. What I wanted to show you guys is, I mentioned there's some like filters and settings and things like that that a lot of people don't know about. And also real quick, if people have real quick questions that I don't know if I saw any, I don't think but if you have any questions, if you want to put them on, and then I can go slightly over time if we have any questions. But I really wanted to show us this. So under administration, under setup, under general, we have something called orchestrated configuration. A lot of people don't even know this exists, but this is where a lot of the settings are. So in the general one, we have, you can set what your next MPN is going to be. What's your default volume? Is it barrels? Is it gallons? Temperature format. Are you Fahrenheit or Celsius? So there's that express initials required. So if I had this set to yes, I would have been required to put my initials on there. Let's see. So for batch settings, so your batch format, is it location or brand code? Like what starts the batch information? There's that batch auto select type. It's either FIFO or FIFO. We don't really use FIFO, or first expired, first out, because usually the expiration dates aren't set on the batch information. But then there's separate settings for, like I said, for that year. So what's our date range that's going to default on these different worksheets, etc. I look forward to you guys, or I encourage you guys to take a look and see what you can actually change your functionality on here. But yeah, I just want to show us that at the end of this express production, so production part 2. Like I said, if you guys have any questions, I don't see any open on here, but if you don't, we're at time. So thank you all for attending. And then next week's is going to be sales on our webinar series, if you're attending that. If you guys don't have any questions, if you think of some later, feel free to reach out on our support tickets or looking at our support knowledge base as well. There's a lot of good articles on there, a lot of good videos as well. Doesn't look like we're getting any questions. So yeah, thank you guys all for attending, and I'll see you next week if you're signed up.